Regular council. Where are we here? Nothing to report from closed. Adoption of minutes, please. 5.1, Councilor Gorkalka.
That Monday, April 6, 2020, regular council meeting minutes.
Seconder, Councilor Majinski. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes, council? Staff? No? Okay, thank you. Moving on to 8.1, Northern Rockies Worm Farm Composting. Terry Cavaliere from Northern Rockies to present to council via teleconference on their worm farm composting program. So a bit of background, this was presented to the regional district a little while ago. Northern Rockies has developed this pilot project, and recently BC Winter Games touted themselves as zero waste because they took organic waste and cardboard paper and did a pilot project in Hudson Hope for this vermicompost as well. So because of that, BC Winter Games was able to tout themselves as zero waste. So that was a very interesting program, and definitely worth presentation to council. I think we're just waiting for Terry to phone in here.
Says he's on hold. Oh, we got disconnected.
To teleconferencing. To join the conference, enter your access code followed by the...
It says we're live, but I'm not sure if we are.
At the tone, please state your name followed by the number sign. Thank you. Announcing participant. Participant exiting.
Terry, NRRM.
Is that you, Terry? Thought it said exiting. Probably has to call in again.
Yeah.
Announcing participant.
Terry Cavaliere, Northern Rockies Regional Municipality.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, good afternoon, or good evening.
Good evening. Sorry for the late call.
Hear me okay?
Yeah, we sure can.
Okay.
You're online. Please go ahead and present.
Okay, so I guess the presentation's up and you guys can see it.
Sure can. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go through this presentation quickly. This is the one that we used to roll out to our residents. We started doing this last summer. And then I will give you an update as to where we're at today. And then I'll take any and all of your questions, and hopefully I can answer them. So I'll go through the presentation and go back a little bit in our history and describe the trial and how we got to where we are today. Worms have always been hard at work breaking down organic materials and returning nutrients to the soils. So worm composting or vermicomposting or vermiculture is a way to harness those efforts. Next slide.
Okay.
Worm composting is one method to recycle food scraps and other organic materials into nutrient-rich soil amendment called vermicompost. Worms work with fungi, bacteria, and other invertebrates to transform organic matter into eatable worm castings, which improve soil structure, nutrient storage and availability, and water retention capability of soils. This composting method is simple, effective, and convenient. It saves water, energy, soil, and landfill space. Vermicompost is twice as quick as normal anaerobic composting. So a normal compost, a traditional method, and 12 to 24 months turnaround time. The worms do it in 6 to 12 months. Next slide. The Environmental Management Act mandates for the management of municipal waste and recyclable materials. Solid waste management planning is a proven way to reduce the amount of solid waste requiring disposal in a region, contributing to protection of the environment. Next slide. Why vermicomposting? The Solid Waste Management Plan was approved by the Minister of Environment in 2018. The plan provides clear direction on how to achieve solid waste goals using management initiatives and waste diversion strategies specific to the NRM, and including a waste reduction target of 20% by 2020. Vermicomposting meets guiding principles by preventing organics and recyclables from going into the garbage wherever practical. Just by the nature of our population decline, we've actually achieved this target. Not a good way to achieve the target, but so be it. Next slide. So we use red wigglers. I won't even attempt the Latin version. Are great at vermicomposting because they will stay at the soil surface if there is food available. So these worms stay roughly in the top 12 inches during kind of the spring, summer, early fall, and then as the weather gets colder, they will burrow down a little bit further. And kind of, they'll still eat material over the winter, but not as great as when, of course, when we're in the summer months. Next slide. Accepted information is that they should be kept indoors, as it was thought that they would not survive below 32 or 0 Celsius. Local contractor and business owner Will Holt, who was hired to conduct the trial in 2018, has successfully devised a method of overwintering the worms using recyclable cardboard and paper for insulation. We've had a number of inquiries as to this method from vermicompost experts from North Carolina, primarily southern kind of states, who kind of marvel at this process because the textbooks say this shouldn't be possible. Our consultant that works for Tetra Tech for 40 years just can't believe that we're doing it where we're doing it and that they're eating cardboard, because all traditional science says that this is not possible. Next slide. So we're in the middle of building our permanent location. So we'll procure from Can4 leftover chips from the closed Takama site and the Polar Board site. And we'll lay this over top of the clay liner. This is important because this required a variance to OMAR, the Organic Matter Recycling Regulation, which we sought and was accepted. So that was one of the first steps that we had to clear before we could register the site. And then Wilf, our contractor, begins the layering process. The most important part of this process is keeping the worms hydrated. In a traditional compost, there are requirements in OMAR for achieving a set temperature for a specified time to kill the pathogens. Typically, that's a 2-week period at 60 degrees. We observed this method in Yellowknife, where they have been successful in achieving those targets. But of course, those temperatures would kill our worms. So that was the other variance that we had to seek from the Ministry of Environment, because we're using the worms to kill the pathogens as the food waste and material is processed through the worm gut of the worm. This process here is patented in the US and patent pending in Canada. Next slide. So the picture that you should see here is what the site looked like before and after. August of 2017 compared to October 2018 is pretty stark. And that was 14 months. And 14 months is because that's when we got around to test here on results from our lab indicated a high grade class A cultural compost. Our consultants had said it's some of the best compost they've ever seen. So we started the trial in 2017 in part with a grant from NDIT. We achieved the trial was for 70,000 kilograms or 70 ton. Because the budget was so tight, you can advance the slide. Because the budget was so tight here, we procured the material for the contractor, and we did this to save costs and to keep the material as sterile as possible with little to no contamination of plastics and that sort of thing. We actually used the local IGA to provide us with significant cardboard. Typically, the IGA store here will backhaul their cardboard, and they were giving us 1,000-pound bales as much as we could take. And then once we achieved the weight, we stopped taking that material, and they continued to backhaul that material after the trial ended. Next slide. So all their organics were locally sourced, cardboard, paper, leaves, grass clippings, wood waste, and food waste. One of our new windrows was actually started due to an overturned produce truck on the Alaska Highway. Typically, that would just go to the landfill, and we were able to, our contractor raced out there with his trailer and truck and was able to gather a significant supply. And so one of the windrows was started with almost 100% organic food waste. Excuse me. The next slide. After the trial project, worms demonstrated that they were able to survive the winter weather. And an important final step was to test samples of worm castings for quality and contaminants. So there was two main reasons for the trial. Could we create Class A compostable material? And would the worms survive the winter? And the answer to that, to both those questions, is a resounding yes. Next slide, please. As I stated earlier, GHD, our consultants, have stated probably the highest quality compost available in the province at the moment. After the trial project, worms demonstrated they were able to survive the winter. An important final step was to test the samples. The results came back extremely positive and were approved for both agricultural and landscape use. Next slide, please. Benefits. Progress in meeting solid waste management plan, community energy management plan, and official community plan goals. Next slide. Positive environmental and social impact of organic waste diversion resulting in reduced volume of waste entering the landfill. Next slide. The reduction in volume of waste landfill extends the lifespan of the landfill, which provides economic benefits to the municipality. Next slide, please. Benefits. Diverting organic waste from the landfill to a compost system has the potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions based on a projection that 48 tons of food waste will be diverted, reduced by 140 tons, or the equivalent of removing 25 motor vehicles per year. And I'll give you an updated number here in a moment to kind of illustrate how successful we've been in the first year. Next slide. Vermicompost, worm castings. worm-worked material produced by earthworms is a high-quality soil conditioner and can be used as a substitute in synthetic fertilizers. This compost is so nutrient that the recommendation from our consultants is 1 part compost to 4 parts soil for the mixture. Additional benefits, next slide, sorry. Corresponding decrease in use of synthetic fertilizer application, which are known to contribute to downstream pollution by leaching of excess nutrients into groundwater or surface water. Our landfill is located less than 1 kilometer from the Muskwa River. So for us, this was an important benefit. Next slide, please. Vermicompost can be sold to generate revenue to offset the cost of organic waste collection or used by the municipality for landscaping. Due to the COVID outbreak, the municipality's staff are looking into ways to promote additional gardening methods within the municipality, and they've reached out to us to see if we can provide them compost. Currently, council has not given us direction on the compost, but we're free to give it away to nonprofits and local citizens, providing the testing comes back positive. Next slide, what can you do? Again, next slide. What to do with your organic waste? We modified the transfer station at the landfill. I'll illustrate that in the next slide to accept materials. We set up the slide I'm going to show you next is a little bit outdated. We've increased the amount of bins, and we've used magnetic signs on the front to indicate which of the 4 categories, because obviously we find in the winter there's not much grass or leaves coming in November, December, January. So we convert those bins for cardboard. In our business plan for the full scale, we are going to go to 40-yard bins for cardboard and for leaves, grass clippings, respectively. Food waste will still be handled in 6-yard bins, just simply to avoid nuisance odors, and that they can be dumped on a much more regular basis. Regional Council also waived tipping fees for organic waste-only drop-offs. Next slide. So in this photo, you'll see what we did here with 6-yard bins. We repurposed some old cardboard bins. It's hard to see in this photo, but in the front, you'll see those signs. Those are magnetic and can be moved from bin to bin. We have 4 categories of waste. Next slide, please. Grass and leaves. Grass clippings, leaves, garden foliage. Next slide. Food waste, vegetable scraps, coffee and tea grounds, and meat, including bones. Of all the 4 categories, this one's the most important. Rotting food is the #1 contributor to methane gas. So the more food waste we can get in, the better it is for the environment. And quite frankly, I think the worms prefer food waste to cardboard. Next slide, please. We also take cardboard and paper. So we take printer paper, newspaper, but we can't take magazines or photocopy wrapper. And it's only specific to photocopy wrapper that has a glossy inside coating. This is important as well because this required a variance from MOE. Cardboard is considered a recyclable material, and we had to demonstrate that the cardboard was an integral part of the process. So along with the chips and the other things that I mentioned, we did get a variance on the cardboard as well. So we're the only place in the province that's using cardboard right now in their compost, to my knowledge. Next slide, please. We take unprocessed wood, so nothing treated, nothing painted. We're limited to the 3-inch diameter only because of our equipment. We only have a 3-inch chipper. as part of the business plan that I'll speak to you a little bit later, the grant will allow us to buy a 20-inch wood chipper. So we'll be able to take any wood waste up to 20 inches in diameter. Next slide, please. So just a kind of interesting facts. The worms are red wigglers. 100 pounds of waste equals 7 to 15 pounds of castings. Next slide. This is a biggie. Each worm eats half of its body weight per day. A slide here later on will say that we have about 16,000 pounds of worms in the compost. That number is outdated. Our best guess right now is 50 to 70,000 pounds of worms in the compost. So those worms are eating anywhere between 20 and 40,000 pounds of material a day.
Wow.
Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, worm composting takes half the time that regular composting takes. Next slide, please. This slide is outdated. Our numbers in 2019 were 150 tons. And I'll give you the breakdown when I summarize 2019. Next slide, please. And here's so the science says that worms will double their population every 90 days. There's no way to quantify that. There's no way to measure that accurately, of course. What's interesting, though, is that the worms lay huge amount of eggs over the winter, and the eggs will stay viable until spring, and then as the weather warms up, these eggs will hatch, and we've seen many instances of a very healthy population of little baby worms in the spring. We will be here probably in the next 2 weeks digging into the compost. We haven't touched them since last winter, or since last fall, pardon me. And we'll be looking to see for evidence of any decline in population. We had a very cold 40 below week to 10 days here this winter. We can tell that at least partially that the worms have survived due to the steam rising from the compost.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it. So I'll give you a quick update of where we're at, and then I'll take your questions. So in 2019, we took 150 tons. 27% was food waste. 26.2% was leaves. 26.1% was cardboard, and 20.8% was wood. We are a registered facility. The registration process was really simple, because we're under 5,000 tons. So it was more us telling them that we were going to do this as opposed to applying for a permit. And once we achieved our variances, the permit, the site was registered and away we go. So we are actually a registered facility now under MOE. As I stated earlier, construction of the permanent site, the site was tendered last year, but we couldn't award because we are in the middle of a grant application to the Organics Infrastructure Program. They didn't make their announcements until January, and so the notice to proceed to the contractor went out here 3 weeks ago. So we've already started clearing the site, and we're a little bit of a hold now until the ground thaws, but we hope to be in full operation by mid-July.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Terry. I really appreciate the presentation. I think it's a fascinating project, and it's great to see you've had such success with it. Just curious what kind of a capital cost it took to get it rolling.
Okay, so the total budget for this project for the permanent location is $667,640. of which $445,100 is grant from the Organics Infrastructure Program. So the municipal portion is $222,000,
Okay,
and that will cover off the preparation of the site, the purchase of the wood chipper, the purchase of 40-yard bins, the purchase of a trommel. The site has to be self-contained for leachate control. So the site also includes a leachate drainage system that feeds into a pond in the middle of the site. And that water or that leachate will be fed back to the worms. We also have a surface retention pond, the landfill surface retention pond, probably 200 meters away from the site, and we'll use the surface retention pond to hydrate the worms over the summer months as required.
okay, thank you. Any other questions, Council? Councilor Kalka?
Did you see any bear issues there? In regards into your composting?
Well, the bears are always a problem in Fort Nelson, but the whole site under the land, because it falls under the landfill permit, has to be enclosed with an electric fence. So the only trouble we have seen that was something we should have thought of was ravens. The ravens have discovered our compost. Luckily, the worms are not above ground, so it's too much work for the ravens, but we do have plans to install some protective netting, retractable protective netting over the compost.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Council? No. Okay, thank you very much, Terry. I really appreciate you calling in and giving us that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have my email. If any other questions come up, don't hesitate to feed them through me. I'm more than happy to answer any of these questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you, you too.
Participant exiting.
Terry Cavaliere, Northern Rockies.
Okay, moving on to 9.1 consent agenda. Recommendation, please, Councilor Kalka.
That all items in April 20th, 2020 consent agenda be adopted for information.
Seconder. Councilor Majinski, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. I'd like to bring up 9.2 for discussion. Seconder, Councilor Krokalka, all in favor? Carried, thank you. So this is concerning to me. In the report, it said that this animal was not deemed to be a danger to the public, even after this incident, and that really doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't make sense to me. So I guess, Ms. Torval, could you expand on that decision for us?
I can pass it through to Mr. Curry. And
Please.
He can, respond to this. He's been dealing with the file.
Please, thank you.
Okay, so your worship, if I may, I'll give you an overview of what the entire situation happened. So the individual who was unfortunately bit by the dog was walking their own dog and came upon a pack of 4 dogs from two different households that were in the vicinity of where the residence was. The dogs essentially, not ganged up isn't the right word I wanted to look for, but they heard the individual's dog barking and thought it was another dog wanting to play. So the dogs, all 4 of them, decided to come over and see what was going on. The dog in question then actually bit. It was a fairly young dog. There was 4 of them that were all jumping and bounding and everything, and this dog took it one step further and bit said individual in the leg. An RCMP member was actually witnessing the entire thing on his deck and gave a statement that things looked like they were fine until the dog bit. The person obviously yelped and then went over to render aid. All the dogs scattered when the person approached, when the RCMP member approached, who was off duty, and didn't have anything else to do with it. The dogs did come back to investigate afterwards, but there was never another attack other than the initial bite. I interviewed other neighbors in the area, and most of them were unaware that there was a dog living at that house. We've had no documented cases of any complaint, whether it be from dogs barking, dog at large from the residents. And to simply go from a 0 to a dangerous dog, we need to have a trend established for that. It can't be just, straight to the end game, right? So not having that, the decision was made not to warrant a dangerous dog. In the instance of this animal, the impositions for being a dangerous dog are already being looked after at this residence. He already has the condition for a fenced yard that a 12-year-old cannot access. That's a condition. The only other imposition that would happen for this animal is anytime that it would be off out of his yard and on leash would be a muzzle. At this point, nobody even knew in the area that this dog was there. It's not a dog that is walking around the neighborhood on a consistent basis. Therefore, the necessity for a muzzle wasn't warranted at that point either. The RCMP were called as a result of the protocols from Northern Health. I was called afterwards to attend, which I did do so as a response to our own protocols. If there was a dangerous dog out in the neighborhood that is being dangerous by RCMP standards, we're to be notified from an animal control point of view. Contact was made with the owner that night, and to which the owner was very remorseful about the whole situation. The owner took full responsibility in claiming that he didn't latch the latch adequately, and it was just an oversight and omission on his part. I did make contact with the individual who was attacked, who was understandably shooken up over the attack. I mean, anybody who's ever had a dog bite can attest that you're a little bit, apprehensive about dogs of any breed after that. You just don't know when they can turn. The individual themselves were issued warnings, and both dogs from the individual's household that the bite occurred. That individual was given warnings for dog without license, dog at large for both of the animals, as well he was issued a $400 fine for a dog bite, which is one of the most extensive fines that we have for animal control. The next day when I went to go and deliver said fine, the animal owner did not even blink, completely took full responsibility for the occurrence. And even at that point when I went there, he had already made preparations to improve his latching system, as well as install privacy slats on the fence that he had there now. So definitely remorseful, and it takes full ownership, and therefore I stand by my decision to not go to a dangerous dog.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Procalka?
So if I may finish a little bit, just a couple of things that were said by Mr. Curry there. So I guess my concern is, or question I have is, why a warning for no dog license and another fine? Through Mr. Orloff and me.
Ms. Torval?
So, Your Worship, when it comes to dog licensing, dogs at large, dog licensing, we find that we get more of a compliance out of, hey, if you get this done today, there won't be a fine, to which actually did happen. So the next morning, he was in first thing in the morning and got both of those dogs licensed. The fine for a dog without license is $50. It cost him, I don't recall off the top if they were fixed or not, but it would cost him up to $50 to get both dogs licensed anyway. We find that we can get more compliance out of people by saying, if you do this right now, there won't be a fine, you get the warning. If you don't get it tomorrow when I come back and they don't have it, there's a fine associated.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to bring up the discussion about having a bringing back the animal bylaw position. I think that I was an eyewitness when the decision was made not to have animal control within the district, and I think it's been a trial period to see if this is something that can be controlled by the residents through Facebook, what have you, and I think that trial period should be finished. I think that we should be bringing back the animal control position, because Chief Curry, obviously, well, it sounds like he handled the situation quite well, and it sounds like we have a dog owner that recognized that they made a mistake. But I think we need to look at the systemic issue that there's loose dogs. There are loose dogs out there. We as a community, and it's not just an individual instance. I went out just this weekend. I went out for for a jog, and while I was out, I witnessed multiple dogs that were not leashed. Even coming to this council meeting, I thought I saw a dog that was not on a leash in our community. And I think this is something that we should be addressing, and we should be more proactive with it, because if you saw the picture of the damage that this person suffered, that was through a winter boot. You know, imagine if that was a child. Imagine if that was somebody who didn't have that winter boot on. And I think that I think we really need to bring this position back. You know, I'm interested to hear what other members have to say. I am prepared to make a motion if that's something we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Burka. One thing that's concerning is if there are loose dogs, and it is after hours, how are they taken care of? Are they just by complaint driven only, or he say, she say? I'd like to know what the parameters are, and if it's a reoccurring dog that comes out all the time, is it the first time it's just a warning? Next time is it a fine? How many times until, you know, the fines get too steep that the person should maybe reconsider having their dog in a fenced backyard? And with that, the second household, were they contacted and were they fined for having loose dogs? That's my concern, because once there's 2 dogs and then there's 4, it's almost like a pack mentality, and they all are jumping. And I did see the photo as well, and it's not just the damages that this individual incurred, it's psychological too, because like, what if you see another big dog coming at you and it's barking? Might be playful, you don't know. And yeah, I've been bitten before, and I was a kid when it happened, and it does play effects on you when you see any dog, because you want to pet a dog, you always do, but now I still don't put my hand out to a dog ever, just from that, you know. And I can see how somebody as an adult can be traumatized from this even now, you know.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask Ms. Torval if we could get more of an explanation on the process, but yeah, I agree with you. Ms. Torval, can you ask Mr. Curry, as far as I understand, the after hours and weekend calls, there isn't really a person at the end of the line if there was a complaint call? Could you clarify that?
Mr. Curry, you could answer.
Your worship, you're 100% correct. So after hours, so outside of regular business hours from 8 to 4:30, and on weekends, there's no animal control services offered by the municipality. If an individual sights a dog or has a complaint about a dog, whether it be barking, off leash, anything, they can call the fire hall, they can leave a voicemail message, and we answer that at the first available opportunity on the next business day. Quite often, this ends up resulting in us not being there and getting all the facts. We don't have sufficient evidence to present for fines. But in almost every case, anything that's after hours will most certainly end up in a verbal conversation, if not a written warning. Written warnings don't carry any fines associated with them. It's kind of a cover, you know what, to try and make sure that the point gets across that this isn't an acceptable behavior of the dog and more importantly the dog owner, because they're more responsible. In response to Councilor Majinski's question about the fines, so generally, depending on the situation and to what we were called to, it may result in just a verbal or a written. If we observe somebody with a dog off leash, for example, it may be as simple as us stopping, having a conversation with them. It's a verbal interaction. If we're called for a complaint, it almost definitely will end up in a written warning or a door notice if nobody's around. The point you make about fines and how they work. So if you get a written warning the first time, it's a fine the next time. Our fine system doesn't rely on a sliding scale, so it's simply one after one after one after one as the infractions occur. Quite often what we're happening is we're seeing one dog in the day, and then we may see it 3 nights later or even a month later in the afternoon. But unfortunately at that point we can't do anything because there's no coverage at that point. There's no on-call. We're trying to deal with the next day. And is it the same dog? And if you put 2 dogs up with a similar breed without tags on them, how can you really 100% tell if they're the same dog? it's a gray area, so you can't fine on that, because as soon as that happens, they may dispute it. We're going now through the judicial process, through the provincial courts, and it's a drawn out thing, but it's probably not gonna go in our favor anyway, because we haven't proved reasonable doubt. That the dogs are the same, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Howell?
Oh, maybe it's time we start with stepping up our enforcement. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are for how much bylaw officer is actually approaching people. What do we have for statistics on it? But maybe we've reached that point where we, you know, I know it's a complaint-driven system, but maybe we need to give direction on this to say that no, the bylaws in place. People need to have their dogs on leashes. They need to be in their own yards, and that type of stuff. I mean, we do have a full-time bylaw person. We do have a fire chief who can enforce bylaws, and I don't quite understand if the deputy fire chief can or not, but you know, there is a third person that if we needed somebody, and is there any possibility, I mean, we are in a reduced amount of activity in the community because of COVID-19, would this be an opportunity to maybe look at some type of an on-call system where of those 3 people, they're on call for 4 hours over the weekend and they can accept some phone calls so that we at least have some coverage. When I had a conversation with Ms. Torville today, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that for us to do this type of enforcement, for our bylaw officer to pick a dog up or put it in the car or bring it to the pound or whatever, they have to have specific training for that. And that I was not aware. I thought our bylaw officer already had that or would have been given that by this time. But the way I understand it, she doesn't have that at this time. And I don't know, does our fire chief have that as well, that specific training? I'm not sure of that either.
Ms. Torval?
Mr. Curry, if you'd like to answer.
So if I may, Your Worship, I'll touch on a few different points of what Councillor Howe's talking about. So currently, I do have statistics for calls that the bylaw officer has dealt with in the last actually year and for the 2020 season. So in 2019, the bylaw officer responded to 80 calls for service. That is just our day-to-day operations. So that's either picking up from somebody calling in the night before, or we're getting called during the day. That resulted in about 88 hours worth of actual service.
For dogs.
For dogs, and I'm talking just dogs with this. This is only animal control and specifically with dogs. So out of those 80 calls, 15 warnings, written warnings were issued. 9 of those were for dogs at large, but all of them had to do with animal control. Out of those 15 calls, those 15 warnings, 6 were issued fines, resulting in about $730 worth of fines for 2019. In 2020, we have responded to 14 calls, resulting in 20 hours of service. We've written 5 warnings. All 5 were for dog at large complaints, and 1 was issued fines, which is the incident in question, for $400. Your point about who can write bylaw infractions. So currently, right now, the only 2 bylaw officers confirmed for the municipality or for the district of Tumbler Ridge is myself and the bylaw officer. The deputy fire chief can issue fines under the fire protection bylaw only. That's the only one that she can actually attest to. Our protective services specialist, Mr. Thibodeau at the fire hall, is not confirmed under either one of them. So if he is acting in my stead, if I'm away on training, or if he's doing that, he can still only do the fire services or fire protection bylaw. With regard to training, it is not a requirement that you get the training to be an animal control officer. It is a best practice to do that. Our previous bylaw officers have not had this training. I do not have this training. It is a best practice. You need to make sure that you have the availability of the tools in place. If it is something that you have an aggressive dog, we rely on the RCMP very much like you would even if you did have the training. They've got the tasers. We do have a pole to try and keep dogs at distance, for which I have had to use in the past, but the formalized training is not a requirement of the job position of either animal control or bylaw officer.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Councillor Majinski?
I see a bit of a hesitancy to put this onto our fire chief and onto bylaw. I think this technically if we do have this many calls, whether it's either loud barking noise complaints driven or if it's off leash dogs, somebody needs some serious training for these, because I wouldn't want to be going up to a dog that's been bitten somebody and try to wrangle it into a vehicle. I think that's pretty dangerous. So it almost seems like you'd almost have somebody specialized to do that. I just don't know if we're at that stage where if we're gonna have a lot of bites per year. Like, I don't know if there's a magic number you say, okay, 10 a year, and then, you know, but if that was a child, I think we would probably take this a heck of a lot more serious than one adult. And I think we should think of this as a child. We don't want this to happen. On that street alone, every single house has a dog. Every single one of them on that street alone. And that's just on 2 houses, 4 dogs, and that was a pack right on the corner. That could be, what if they went around down to Wolverine? 6 more dogs, you know, like, and I've seen it before, and I've been to places where dogs just swarm and then they move on, and they're up to no good mischief. So I'd like to see maybe a trial go on first and see how many calls we get, and if there are more complaints coming in. Now a lot of people are at home, they are doing a lot of walking, so just to see if there's a best practice of people keeping their dogs on the leashes when they do walk with them, and or if they're just stray dogs just taken off from the home. So.
Councillor Norbury, then Kalka.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of my concerns is the hours that this service is being provided. And I'm looking at service decisions, and when I think about what the issues with dogs are, like, yeah, during the work hours, there are going to be like that dog that jumped the fence. You know, they're out roaming around. But I'm concerned about the after hours, the after 4 p.m. when people are coming home and they're taking their dogs out for a walk. How many people have those dogs on a leash? I think the majority are, but there are some people that we need to target. And we need to say that we're letting this slide. It's time to stop letting this slide. It's time to sort of say, hey, we need to do a little bit of targeted bylaw enforcement. We're making sure that your dog is on a leash, because we can't have dogs fighting. We can't have dogs biting people. And it is your responsibility as a dog owner to do all you can to make sure that your dog is under your control. And I believe that was in the bylaw. It's under your control. So I think we should be looking for a report on a bylaw contact position based on the amount of calls.
Okay. Councillor Kalka, then Hal.
Yeah, so I just have a couple things, and one of it has to do with is doing the bylaws like complaint driven. You know, you mentioned about how many more complaints and tracking complaints. I don't think we should be doing a complaint. It should be enforcement. Should be asking that just to be enforced, and whether that's a motion or direction of staff to, it's an enforcement now. It doesn't have to be somebody complaining about dogs barking, dogs off the leash, dogs running loose. Don't have a license. I mean, that's up to me. They're up to the bylaw. I mean, if they want to give the warning and hope they come get it, or maybe we up our fines for having a dog with no license. Make it worse getting your license, because you're gonna get a $200 fine for not having a license, and then you have to go buy a license. Maybe don't give them a warning to come buy a license. Give them both. My personal opinion. When we talk about after hours and stuff like that, I wonder if that's something that Mr. Orville can speak to in regards to changing the shifts up. Like right now, we got Monday to Friday, 8 to 4:30. We have 2 people that are able to do bylaw/animal control. So I know Councilor Norbury mentions it's controlled by the residents. This animal control, I differ on that, because we have 2 bylaw/2 animal control individuals. So I'd like to hear from her in regards to the shifting. Like right now, it's Monday to Friday, 8 to 4:30. What about moving those shifts around? Is that doable in regards to contracts? Is there notice that has to be given to the employees?
Mr. Orville.
I guess it is doable. One of the employees is a union employee, so notice would need to be given to split the shifts if it was agreeable. But I would suggest at this time that maybe council just request a report so that we can outline several scenarios for you to help with the animal control situation in Tumbler Ridge at this time.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed an increase in population of dogs. I think from what I remember, back when the animal control officer was let go, or the position wasn't needed anymore, there wasn't as significant amount of dogs as there is now. I've noticed an increase in population, definitely, and I do agree. I think it's time to put some teeth on it, I think it's also time that we look at a separate position. Pardon the pun, of course. I don't think our bylaw position is able to do both jobs effectively, in my opinion. Councillor Howe?
So, Councillor Curry, Fire Chief, Curry said 88 hours in a year in 2019. That equates to 4% of the bylaw officer's time dealing with complaints from dogs. 4%. I'm not sure exactly what the bylaw officer's wage is, but it's probably somewhere in that $75,000 a year range, somewhere in there. But I think the contract was $40,000, if my memory serves me correct.
30-ish, yeah.
Somewhere up in that range for after hours or on call. And that to me is the sticking point here. I think if we get a little bit more enforcement, like if we push this a little bit more and we say to our bylaw, like, listen, we want you to pull over and actively, if you see dogs running around, get out and levy the fines and do what we have to do to start letting people know that we are going to be enforcing this a little more. It has got out of control. People are just letting their dogs, when they go on Monkman and Mackenzie Way, the dogs are just running off through the woods. So I think that's the first level that we would start at, is get the enforcement to try to rein some of this back in. Yeah, the enforcement is not going to stop dogs jumping fences and this and that, but if the residents know the enforcement is up, we are going to be handing out more fines. It's on our radar. We're aware of it. Maybe you get a little more compliance and people taking a little bit more care to shut those gates and fences, have dog tags on their dogs, and make sure that stuff is taken care of. So I think our first step is enforcement before we look at throwing another $40,000 or whatever the contract is for an after-hours person to do this.
Good point. Ms. Torval?
I just wanted to remind council that it is now 8 o'clock.
Yes.
Motion to proceed fast.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Krukowka?
Make the motion that we exceed the meeting 2-hour, or the 3-hour rule, continue the meeting after 8 p.m.
Seconder? Councillor Lehman? All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Torval. So, Ms. Torval, would staff be looking for direction from council to up the enforcement by the bylaw officer for dog animal control? Or is that something that is just complaint driven? These are the calls we get, this is what we adhere to?
If memory serves me correct, I believe in the animal responsibility bylaw, there is something about complaint-driven complaints, responses to. I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. But we could amend the bylaw, the animal responsibility bylaw, and if you wanted to mention about increasing fines, those things could be done, or we could just bring back a report, whatever council would like at this time.
Okay,
We're just, bring
Yep.
this up again.
thank you. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you. I personally like to see some options coming back. So I'm going to make a motion that staff prepares a report on animal bylaw options.
Seconder? Councillor Howe? Any more comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving to 10.1, Financial Plan Bylaw 686, 2020, 2024 Financial Plan. Report from the Chief Financial Officer dated April 20th, 2020 to seek first 3 readings. The Financial Plan Bylaw, pre-approval of capital and special projects, and approval to bring forward a budgeting policy amendment. Recommendation, please. Councillor Krukowka.
I'd like to put a recommendation on the floor that we defer first reading, second reading, and third reading of the financial bylaw plan number 686, 2020.
Motion to defer. Seconder, Councillor Howe. Comments? Councillor Norbury?
So I am opposed currently to deferring this. I think that we should make this decision now. We've had these are all projects that we've had looked at, debated, thought of the merits, and at this point in time, if we want to take things out, this is the time to take them out. We are at a crucial point in time where we are going to be competing with all of the municipalities to get this work done. So we need to continue this process quickly, so that we can get this work done. And if there's issues that we don't like in here, well, now's the time to take them out.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Krokowka?
Yeah, so I'll speak to a couple things. I just said the first, second, and third reading. If you look further down on our agenda, it's pre-approved for the capital budget. That's not included in those, in the defer. And the reason I say defer, I think gives Ms. Torval time to overview some of the comments that we discussed tonight. Gives her a chance to do an overview, maybe come back to council. I also have a motion further on in the agenda, and I believe that some of that information that we may get back from not-for-profits that we are funding could make a difference in regards to core budgets and so on. Not worried about capital, more or less core.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. In previous meetings, when we have a vote on whether to extend the meeting past the 8 o'clock deadline, is that not have to be a unanimous vote by council? No? Okay,
Just
sorry.
majority.
Okay. Any other comments?
I thought you wanted to continue.
Okay, motion to defer. All in favor?
Announcing participant.
Opposed?
Dan.
Carried, thank you. Okay, recommendation 4. Councillor Krokowka?
The council pre-approves all capital and special project attached in Schedule A.
Seconder? Councillor Norbury? Comments? Councillor Norbury?
Just, take my comments from the last one and bring it up to now. Listen, we need to get through approval of these capital projects.
Yep, I agree. Call to question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Recommendation 5, Councillor Krokowka?
That an EO8 council budgeting policy amendment be presented to council with timelines focused on work completion.
Seconder? Councillor Lehman? Comments, questions? Call to question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. 10.2, fees and charges, amendment bylaw number 688/2020, report from the Deputy Director of Corporate Services dated April 20th, 2020, seeking first 3 readings of a fees and charges amendment. Councillor Krokowka.
If I may, to Mr. Orlow, this doesn't affect, the deferring of the financial plan does not affect these. Just want to make sure that.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Just wanted to confirm, I know that was a question by Councilor earlier, so. That the District of Ridge fees and charges amendment bylaw number 688/2020 be read a first time.
Seconder, Councillor Kirby. Comments? Councillor Howe?
I got one here about the sound system rental of $20. What sound system did you rent for $20?
Ms. Torval?
Thank you, council. There's a sound system that's over there that, if somebody's having an event, they can rent it to them.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Called question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Number 2, Councillor Norbury.
For the District of Tumbler Ridge fees and charges amendment bylaw number 688/2020 be read a second time.
Seconder, Councillor Krokowka. Comments? Councillor Howe?
There was something that we discussed previously, and I wonder if there is an opportunity if staff could put it in, and that was about free driving range for members when the course is booked for special interest group. Example is like a weekend tournament or men's night, ladies' night, senior afternoon. Would this be an opportune time to put that in, or would this be a separate time to do it?
You can, amend.
Okay.
It's fine to include that.
That's one thing, and the other thing I think that we should also have in this as well is for cart storage down at the golf course. And I think cart storage should be reserved for people with memberships. So some people take advantage of the cart storage down there and don't have a membership down at the golf course. And I think for you to have that benefit to be able to store your cart there, you should at first be a member. That should be a member first benefit. And I think that should also be added. I don't know how we go about doing that, but those are 2 things that at this time I'd like to see them put in.
Okay, so it'd just be amendments to the bylaw.
You just need to vote on the amendments.
So,
He would make an, sorry.
yeah, so you would need to make another amendment to include those 2 items in fees and charges
At this time,
at this time, and then we can
okay. I'd like to make an amendment to see if we can add that cart storage should first be a requirement for someone to have a membership. And secondly, that free driving range be available for members when the course is booked for a special interest group. An example is a weekend tournament or a men's night, ladies' night, senior afternoon.
Okay, seconder for the amendment, Councillor Majinski. Comments or questions? Councillor Norbury?
I'll make a comment. I think both of those recommendations are a pretty good idea. I like the idea of the free driving range. It's sort of like a, sorry it's being used, but you can whack some balls around still a little bit, right? So it helps, because I know there is a bit of contention in the community about when these tournaments are happening and they have an absolute direct need that I think it fills. And the second one about the cart storage, I would agree in that it should go to members first, but there should be some opportunity for, if there's space, that we can allow those people to store, because that's a potential source of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But on the whole, I think they're both great.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and I know that there is a wait list as well down there. I don't think we'll ever have an issue locking that thing up. There's interest there that we probably could do another cart storage down there as well. Just, they're pretty expensive. It's $400,000 to put one of them in. But I agree. I mean, if it got to the point where we didn't have enough people that could store it, because they didn't have a membership, you could then possibly bring people in. But I think if you had a date that was whatever, by June 1st, if you don't have your membership paid for, then you can't, your cart can no longer be stored in here. If everything is paid up by June 1st, you should be in. Something like that could be developed by staff.
Okay. Call the question on the amendments. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So number 2, the recommendation of the District of Tumbler Ridge Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 688/2020 be read a second time as amended. Seconder? Councillor Lehman. Any more comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Number 3. I'll move that the District of Tumbler Ridge Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 688/2020 be read a third time as amended. Seconder, Councillor Norbury. Any more comments, questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 11.1 Climate Action Revenue Incentive Public Report. Recommendation, please. Councillor Norbury.
For information.
Second. Councillor Krokowka. Comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Done 11.2. So 11.3 schedule of meetings. So Ms. Torval, with the CLGA cancellation, wondering if we should be adding a meeting to that Monday. Just check the date here. Monday 11th, or sorry, Monday, May 11th. And not sure about a P&P meeting or a regular meeting. Guess P&P is per usual, Ms. Torval.
The way things are going and with our budget being deferred tonight and with waiting on information with regards to due dates and whatnot, it may be necessary to, we may be having a budget meeting that night, so you might want to consider that as well.
Yeah, so I think we should plan for a meeting that night, whether it be a budget meeting or if not a budget meeting, then a P&P. Okay, does that need to be by motion? Yeah, I'll motion that, please. Seconder, Councillor Kalka. All in favor?
No,
Sorry, discussion, sorry. Councillor Kalka.
Yeah, and I think we should probably list it as a budget meeting. I would think when my motion comes up further down, to be a timeline set to the non-profit boards. And hopefully that timeline would be met by them if it's passed by this council. And we could make the timeline, I mean, with Mr. Torval's help. I mean, I'm thinking if they have it done by the 7th, I mean, that gives them just about 2 weeks to respond back to staff if the motion passes. If it doesn't, then, I mean, so be it. But just want to make sure that's aware.
Okay. Other comments? Okay, all in favor of making May 11th another possible budget meeting? Opposed? carried, thank you. Okay, anything else on schedule of meetings? Okay, moving on to notice of motions. Councilor Kirkowka brought forward following notice of motion at the April 6, 2020 regular council meeting. Councilor Kirkowka.
The council directs staff to contact non-for-profit boards, the District of Tumble Ridge funds such as Tumble Ridge Museum Foundation, Tumble Ridge Global Geopark, and Tumble Ridge Library, Public Library, the Youth Society, Forever Young Society, and others that I may not be thinking of, to find out their plans moving forward in regards to COVID-19 staffing and cost savings.
To the district? Or just cost savings?
We're gonna be staffing and cost savings to themselves.
To themselves, yeah. Seconder? Councilor Lehman? Comments? Councilor Norbury?
So I'm currently against this recommendation. I don't feel that is the district's responsibility to dictate or micromanage nonprofit organizations. It should be left up to them on how they manage themselves in this time.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kirkowka?
Yeah, so I put the motion out there, I tried to do it last meeting, and I'll be honest, we fund these. The budget's on approved, it got deferred tonight, it was passed by majority of council. This is an opportunity for these boards to come back and explain to council if they can do any savings. We already heard from some, I forwarded on emails from boards that I saw. They've already looked at what they can do, and I think it's very viable for this council to see if there's any savings from these other organizations. I mean, I'll talk in regards to one of them right off the bat, the Youth Society. We did a pre-approval of $10,000 for them to do payroll. Community center's been shut down for 5 weeks. I'm sorry, are they paying staff? Did they lay their staff? That is something that council should be able to have information on. It's not micromanaging, you can call it that. And I actually believe you're in a conflict when I have the public library mentioned. You're a direct employee of the public library. My opinion.
Councilor Norbury?
So when we're talking about all nonprofits, it's nonprofits, all of them, just like if, when we're discussing budgets or we're discussing tax rates, when it comes to businesses, it's a large enough discussion topic that there is no conflicts that is required. So if we're talking library individually, I'd be happy to step out, but since we're talking all nonprofit organizations in the district, that is a large sphere, is a large realm. Now, if council has any concerns or issues, why don't they just go talk to them individually? Ask what's happening. What's happening down there, right? No, this is, in my opinion, a micromanagement act, and what are you doing to lay off employees? It is not our position to micromanage organizations, and we should leave it to them to make the right decision. And if, when it comes up to budget time, and we feel that they have not made adequate changes, well then we look at how we value their service moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Howell?
I feel it's my duty to make sure that we're watching the way we spend taxpayers' money. And to me, this is us exercising our due diligence to contact these organizations to say, listen, you know, we're in an area where things are slowing down. We don't think you're not doing what we're asking you to do. So there should be an opportunity for savings. And if there is, what are they? And will we be able to pass any of that back to the taxpayers of Tumbler Ridge? Will we be able to save a little bit on your budgets this year because you're not doing the things that you're set out to do? And who knows how long this is going to go on for, as we've all discussed. I am a little bit concerned and don't quite understand how this is working. This motion was brought forward twice. In the previous meeting in April 6th, this motion was talked about, you brought it forward, Councillor Kirkowka, and it was defeated by this council. So the will of council was not to write these letters, correct?
It was defeated to add to the agenda.
So
it had to be.
We weren't gonna move forward with it.
Because it had to be a unanimous decision.
Right,
Yes.
so the will of council at that time was not to move forward until tonight. But then, Mayor, you went and wrote letters to these organizations and went against the will of council and just decided on your own that you're gonna write these letters. And you wrote these letters to who? You sent us an email and you said you wrote the letter to the library, the museum, and the geopark. And you had heard back from, at that point, we've heard back from the museum and the geopark, but not their boards.
The boards, yes.
From the boards, okay.
Yes.
Well, we also have heard back from TR Cares. You didn't tell us that you were writing a letter to TR Cares, but TR Cares has also responded. So who did you write these letters to? This is the problem with you going ahead and you just writing letters to whoever you want outside of the will of council. I wanted you to write this letter, but this is you going outside the will of council, writing these letters. That's a problem.
That's not a motion to write the letters was defeated. The motion was defeated to add this motion to the agenda last meeting.
Understand that?
Yes.
And we didn't get to the point where we're gonna
So
have.
I didn't go against the will of council.
You did.
Okay, that's your opinion. Thank you. Councillor Norbury.
So, in your defense, Mayor, this is absolutely mayoral privilege. The mayor can do this. Right now, whether he is elected as the mayor, he has that authority. Now, however we may feel about it, we just gotta move on, right? Like, this is the mayor, right? The mayor has that authority, right? So, now, back to discussion. Do we feel that our nonprofit organizations in this community are not committed to trying to saving taxpayers' dollars? I personally believe they are, and that's why I believe that we should not be asking them for these letters. And they should know that there are great opportunities out there for employees that have been laid off. There is not a whole lot of benefit to holding an employee, and we're going to be looking at that moving down in the future. Right? I think we need to trust our nonprofit organizations, and we should be doing that by allowing them to manage their organizations.
Councillor Kirkcalka.
Yeah, and I fully believe it is our right to see what their plans are. I mean, we already had 2 organizations answer, and that was by Mayor Bertrand reaching out. I mean, those people want to answer. Those people want to let you know what they're doing. And I think that's right. That's the good information that we want to see. You can look at what the geopark's done. One of them is something they pulled out of the park by putting these bags together for kids to do at home. Kids to do at home. That's something they're planning. They're also all working from home, the majority of it. I think it is the right information that this council should be asking for. I'll support it.
It's information that we're asking for. It's not information of, we're not asking what layoffs you're doing. We're not asking, you know, it's information, and council has a privy to that, I believe. Any more comments? Okay, Councillor Howe.
How'd you get a letter from TR Cares if you didn't write a letter to them?
She offered the information from the discussion last meeting. Call the question on the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 12.2, Councillor Kirkcalka.
I believe that's already been done in the pre-approval capital project.
Correct. Okay. Councillors' business? Anything, councillors? Councillor Kirkcalka.
So I don't have council business to say. There was a question I wanted to ask, but already motion was put on the floor and it was hardly debated then. And it's gonna go right back to the Turner incident. If we need to put a motion on the floor to bring it back for reconsideration, I will, but just a quick question if I may. So I'm not sure how council like to handle it. It's not to rehash the vote out, but there's just some comments I'd like to make after reaching out and having a very good discussion with this lady, and I think it should be talked about. Good to go?
I would think so.
You can stop me, if any council can stop me. So I guess, wait for the report to come back from staff, and I just wanna add to some of that, and I think I missed it, but, you know, I know this lady had reached out to try to find out if this dog had been vaccinated. Had its shots done, had all. And it sounded like it was a very hard thing for her to get. And that was very disturbing to hear when I had a chat with her, that she literally, more or less, was begging to find that information out, requested by her doctor. So if that could be in the report and how, you know, whether that's a policy we need to know that's there, and how a resident or a person, you know, for having there was another bite in this town, gets that information quick enough for a doctor. There was that one step was missed.
It's important information. Councillor Norbury.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a great comment, Councillor Kirkcalka. And I think that also highlights the importance of having a specialized person for this position, because vaccinations, that's rabies. Rabies still exists. People die of it every year and there's no known cure. And there's real danger there, right? Like, we don't know if dogs are being vaccinated, and you know, I think that highlights the importance of this report coming back.
I agree. Any other councillors' business? Mr. Selena Robinson, It's been really good for him. She's opened up the floor to every community in the province for questions during that time. Good questions have come through. A lot of issues that have come through as well that the ministry has taken back and acted. So the last call there, they are looking for creative ideas of ways to soften the restrictions moving forward. You know, every day is a learning aspect in this COVID crisis, so the province really doesn't have a game plan. So they are looking for intuitive and good ideas to try and lessen the load and get back to some kind of normalcy. Also, I've created, with the help of our EDO department, the Mayor's Task Force for Economic Resiliency. This is going forward with a survey for the businesses and residents in our community to try and gather the information that we are lacking, to try and come up with a strategic game plan moving forward to hopefully reboost our economy later on this year. And also our Waterhouse representative Grant Smith has posted the CAO ad today, and it will run for approximately a month for the ad. Again, it's just a quick snapshot with that ad. We certainly couldn't encompass all of the attributes of the community, but I'm pretty confident with this gentleman. I've had a lot of good recommendations from the region about his work and lots of experience, so looking forward to the process. Question and answer period. I think Councillor
I don't have a question to answer, but a question to you, this task force, is it already preset? And has the terms of reference come before council?
Not yet, no.
So that's coming before the survey goes out to residents and all that, because it's part of that committee?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Terms of reference are still draft. Survey is still draft. We have to narrow down the participants in the committee. Participants can review the terms of reference and make any changes necessary at that time, and then as well as the survey, and then moving forward. Yeah. Councillor Krukowka.
So the terms of reference and the survey will come back to council, and council can make changes when it comes back to council.
Correct. I did send you guys all that information already, draft terms and draft survey. They have changed slightly, so I'll get you the new copies and send them out to have a look. Please, by all means, if you have any suggestions, please bring them forward. This is a collaboration committee, and it's going to be successful with council's help as well. So appreciate all your comments and suggestions. Councillor Howe?
So does this task force plan to spend money?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
Councillor Majinski?
The survey, it says that it'll be remain anonymous. How is that going to go out then? Because if it's through email, that can't be possible. So is it going to be a...
Residents will be by mail, and I believe businesses, I think we were talking about through the chamber, but we're still wrapping our heads around that. Okay. Is there anything else? Motion to adjourn? Councillor Krukowka, second. Councillor Lehman, all in favor? Carried, thank you.